Hey everybody, this is Dave here at Pulp Alley, and this is the start of a new series about how to play Pulp Alley. Specifically, what I would like to do is just kind of start at the front of the book and work our way through it and kind of touch on a lot of different stuff as we go through it. So, kind of update a bunch of our older how-to videos, and in this video, we're basically starting at the front of the book. I would like a little bit of feedback from y'all, whether or not you're finding this helpful, if you need more detail or less detail, that sort of thing. I believe this is going to be helpful for new players and for longtime players as well. So let's just get started. So at this page 1 seems like a good place to start. So, what it talks about here is the scale for Pulp Alley. You know, for scale, we'll play a lot in 28 millimeter figures, but we also do a lot with 15 millimeter or 20 millimeter or 54 millimeter or 30 millimeter, yeah, on and on. And you can switch between those, play whatever scale you want to play. It really doesn't matter. And when we do it, we don't make any adjustments whatsoever. It's all relative, so you don't have to go in there and change stuff. Some folks like to, and that's fine too, but we don't. It talks about it being a tabletop skirmish game for 1 to 4 players. If you get we've played with more players, but it's really designed, and the vast majority of the scenarios are designed for 1 to 4 players. And that's kind of why we always say it's for 1 to 4 players. If you're going to have more players, then you kind of have to, work that into the scenario as well. Base sizes can vary. I prefer 20 millimeter bases when I think the figure will fit on them all right. But we also use some 25 millimeter, and it's perfectly fine to mix those together if you like 30 millimeter bases or whatever. Just something that fits the model, and that works out fine. The next thing it talks about here is measuring. So whenever you're doing measuring, when you're trying to establish basically the distance between two figures, then what you're going to do is measure the distance between those models. And that's basically what measuring is for Pulp Alley. It is worth pointing out that we measure in inches, not half inches. The next thing it says here is, let's see if I can get this on screen. The next thing it talks about here is you can't see everything. So we don't go by the idea of the WYSIWYG or what you see is what you get. I don't think that really works all that well realistically, or certainly not for a pulp setting. So when you look at Gage here, where is she? Here she is, right in front here. When you look at Gage here, if you don't see a ranged weapon on her, I would seriously suggest that you rethink your evaluation, because just because you don't see a ranged weapon on her, that does not mean that she is incapable of throwing some firepower. Remember that characters are defined by their character card, their profile, their skills, their abilities. That's what determines what a character can and can't do, not how their figure is sculpted. The next thing is on there, it says no chart. So this is a big one for us. For Pulp Alley, you will never, ever have to look at a chart during a game. We don't use charts or tables during a scenario. Now, we do use charts before the game starts, but not during the game. And the reason is we just feel like it kind of takes you out of the game. When you're having to stop what you're doing and go over to the book and look up page 307, here's the chart for what happens when I do that. It's just goofy, right? Instead, we would far rather remain focused on the table and the action. That's where the game is taking place, not in the book. The next thing it says is plot driven. The stories are about gathering up the plot points and completing those in the scenarios. That really determines who is the winner and loser in the scenario, not simply beating the heck out of each other. Sure, that's fun, But the real goal is the objectives, the plot points in the scenario. Those give you your experience. Those give you resources so that you could use those in your other games, and so on and so forth. So never lose sight of what the scenario is about. Sometimes it's always fun to just get in there and clobber each other, right? And that's fun too. But remember, the stories are plot point driven. The action sequence, we believe that every single character, when you're playing a game, should be allowed to activate. We don't expect you to paint up miniatures, put them on the table, and then have them basically just sit there. That is goofy. So from turn to turn, every single character is expected to activate. Now, you could choose not to do anything with them, but they still have to activate. We have a rule in the game called being the director, and at one point, hopefully everybody has the opportunity to be the director. What the director does in Pulp Alley is their basic role is to decide who has to activate the next character, and they can pick themselves. There's not a huge amount of power in simply going first in Pulp Alley. As a matter of fact, I think experienced players frequently try to force the opponent to go first so that they can then kind of run the table a little bit on them. So that's part of the tactics of playing Pulp Alley that you'll figure out as you go along. The combat represents struggles between characters, not shooting at a target range, not um, punching a punching bag. So, in other words, when two characters are involved in a tussle, involved in a fight, both of those characters will have a chance of being injured. Both of those characters are probably going to be rolling dice. It is a struggle between those two characters. And what the die roll represents is how well you do in that fight. It's not simply a two-hit roll or right. You could use your dice to block. You could use your dice to go through and hit the enemy. So it's a lot of fun and very interactive. It keeps both players engaged in the action. The equipment and so on in the game for the characters is really intended to be represented by the characters. So we don't get a lot into the detail, the nitty gritty of this and that. Well, she's got a socket wrench and combat boots and overalls and yada yada. Those are just decorations. What we're really looking at is a character is defined by their skills and their abilities rather than what they are carrying. That's not to say that there aren't special items that are worth kind of having additional rules for, and that's back in the gadgets and the gear items and so on and so forth. But most normal items, it's just part of who that character is. Injuries are meaningful in Pulp Alley as well, especially for your leader and sidekick level characters, your higher level characters, because as they get injured, it can impact their skills. So injuries are not simply something that you put a little tally next to it and go, okay, well, I got hurt, and then move on at full strength. No, injuries actually mean something in Pulp Alley, so pay attention to that. We're going to show you just real quickly here on page 2. Let's see, is it this camera? Yep. Page 2, there's a really nice lineup for the action sequence. Who is the director when they instruct someone to activate and then what they do. I'm going to go over that a little bit more, but real quickly, the next thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was just dice. So if you're playing Pulp Alley, we do recommend having about 6 of each of the dice that we typically use. We typically use D6s, D8s, and D10s. We also occasionally use D12s, but that's really for those big, really tough creatures. Now, the truth is that low-level creatures, the dice that you roll oftentimes is a suggestion about how tough that character is as well. So level 1 characters frequently don't roll anything more than D6s. So here's a low level level 1 character, and you'll see they roll all D6s. Now, if you're a sidekick level character, the chances are you're going to be rolling some d6s and some d8s. And if you're a big leader level character, let's see one of those cards, then look at that. He's got some big d10s in there as well. So that's really, really nice. I think rule, keep this one always in your head. In Pulp Alley, you always want to roll a 4 or better. We're not going to change that. It is always you want to roll a 4 or better. If you roll less than a 4, then it is considered unsuccessful. If you roll a 4 or better, and like we showed with Phantom Ace there, well, he was rolling 4 die 10 for his shooting skill. So when you shoot, what that's going to show is how successful you were. So the varying degree of how successful you are really will matter. It's not simply a roll to find out, did I do it or did I not? But that each success that you roll means something. And it also means something when you're doing actions, perils. Sometimes there will be perils and plot points where you only need one success. Sometimes you'll need 2 successes. Sometimes you'll need 3 successes. That could get kind of scary. So when we talk about bonuses and penalties in the game, if something gives you a bonus, what does it do? It adds an extra dice. You still need 4s or better. If something gives you a penalty, then it takes away dice, and you still need to roll 4s or better. 4s or better, that rule never, ever changes. If something allows you to re-roll a dice, then you're stuck with whatever the result is. You can't use the same re-roll to re-roll the same dice more than once. If something ever, if you have an ability that is dropped all the way to no dice, which basically means, like some animals might not be particularly good at shooting, so if you have a skill that has no dice in it, then you can never roll those dice, regardless of bonuses and things like that that could add extra dice in there. And that's basically dice rolling. And that's about all I wanted to cover today. Let me know again whether or not you enjoy this sort of thing. My plan is to go through the whole book and cover a little bit of everything as we go through this. So I guess the next thing will be I'm don't think I'm going to get really far into the next part of the book is creating your leagues. Do you guys want me to do that, or would you prefer that I just jump forward into the rules section and go into the fortune cards, activating your character, and yada yada? Or do we want to go through it page by page and look at the character creation rules next? This all comes out of the Pulp Alley 2nd edition rulebook. We're talking about how to play Pulp Alley, specifically the 2nd edition rules. Let me know. Be sure and get subscribed to our little channel. Hit the like button and the bell so you get a notification when we upload a new video. And that's it for today. We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.